Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of X's and O's with your host, Jimmy. This is going to be a simple podcast that I wanted to do as a hobby to see if it takes off. It's going to be with simple sound equipment, so I'm sorry if the audio isn't crystal clear, isn't super loud. I'm just using what I have here, and I hope you enjoy. I hope you interact with me as I post this stuff on the internet. I'm finally doing it. My wife's getting sick of me talking to her about football, but I've talked to her about it so much that she's got the idea that, hey, I know what I'm talking about, as I was able to predict a few things out there that I guess impressed her enough to push me to do my own podcast. That, and after maybe a year or so of her saying that, I had a friend who had an idea that we should start one up together, and I figured, you know what, I'll start one up, and maybe eventually we will do a joint one, or maybe he'll do his own, and we could interact with each other now and then with a joint one. We'll see how that goes. But hopefully you'll interact with me as I post this stuff on mediums like YouTube, where you can comment or video reply to me, and we can talk about how we agree on the same things, or most likely disagree on some things. Maybe you don't like me making fun of your team and you want to make fun of my team. Hopefully, we can have some fun with it. We can have a little rivalry going, and make this enjoyable. I know football is just a game, just a sport, and there's more important things out there, but it is my dirty little pleasure. It's something I like for entertainment, to wind down, to really put my attention and frustration into. It's something I like. It's it's my hobby. Um, it's something I enjoyed since I was a child. I, as a young child, before I was 10, I thought sports were stupid. I didn't get why people would want to throw a ball and hit it and then run around in a circle, or I guess the diamond. I didn't know why people want to bounce a ball and go shoot a hoop and then have the other team run down and shoot a hoop. Or in football, they run around and throw the ball and chase each other. I was like, well, why? That's ridiculous. But then a friend bugged me to play, and I finally did. And after he saw me hit a guy in a tackle, he was like, you know what, I'm going to teach you all I know about football. Even though we were just kids, I guess he knew a bit. And he helped me become a better player, and actually produced a love for the game in me, because I liked the mixture that's in the game of football. I like the mental aspect where it's a chess game. It's not just about, oh, who's faster, who's stronger. It's about being smart, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, knowing your enemy's strengths and weaknesses, knowing each other's tendencies, and using that to your advantage. Working the chess match, constantly adapting and changing to one another. I found that very interesting. I liked how it got you thinking. And of course, I like the physical aspect of getting to run around, getting hit, hitting people, and not in a fighting sense. You could go and get hit and hit to let out your frustrations in the world without it being a big violent fight where you want to beat the living crap out of each other or kill each other. It's just friendly game of football, and you learn to respect each other and have a good time. I like that you have to be physically and mentally tough. It really strengthens who you are. Granted, as you get older, football becomes a job, it becomes a business. And hopefully, through these podcasts, I can take that out a little bit. Since I'm not going to be getting paid to be doing this, I can put what I really feel about the game into it. I can talk about what's going on in the game, and give my point of view instead of a paid point of view. And hopefully that interests a lot of people. And I don't know. I don't know what I expect to come from it. Hopefully just having some fun with this. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people will wake up to how the league is and make some changes. But I'm not going to count on that at all. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself so you know my background a little bit and why I'll be talking about what I'll be talking about. Because I'm mainly going to focus on the Houston Texans and the New England Patriots. And that's because I grew up in New England, and when I got into football, I became a Patriots fan. And in the past, I guess it's been about almost 10 years now, I've been living in Texas. And over the past few years, I've become a Houston Texans fan. Started supporting them. And that's why I'll be talking about what I'm talking about. At the time I became a Texans fan, it seemed meant to be because the year after I started watching them, when they went 2-14, Bill O'Brien came over as the head coach, brought Romeo Crennel over as the defensive coordinator, brought in an ex-Patriot player and Mike Vrabel to help coach, and a lot of other New England coaches. And I was like, hey, I come down to Texas from New England, really enjoy football, and now a lot of New England coaches and some players coming down to coach for the Texans. It's meant to be, and it just built the connection even more. So that's what I'll be focusing on, but I will talk about other teams, other players, and what have you. I'll give my 2 cents. I figured in this introduction, I wasn't just going to talk about me and why I love football, but I was going to talk about a couple of subjects to give you an idea of not only what I'm talking about, but how I talk about them in my point of view. And I figured 2 things I would talk about is Tim Tebow and how the NFL is rigged. Give you a perspective that you're not going to hear on ESPN, NFL Network, or what have you. They might hint to these things a little bit, but they're not really going to bring them up. Now, the interesting thing is with Tim Tebow that I didn't know about until this maybe a few months ago is that he would give all his money to charity, all his bonuses. And I didn't know that. Because when you're a rookie and you sign an NFL contract, any endorsements you might get, the NFL gets a percentage of it. Because the NFL is a greedy organization that just finding ways to make more and more money, and they're not happy with the money they're making. It always has to be more, and that's what's going to ruin the game. But anyway, the only way your money wouldn't go to the NFL is if you gave the money from your endorsements to charity. And that's what Tim Tebow did. So the NFL didn't like that because Tim Tebow became very, very popular. He wasn't the greatest quarterback, but he just had a knack for winning games, especially in the fourth quarter. He'd just somehow win the game. I don't know if it's just because defenses loosened up. I don't know if the team around him stepped up. I don't know if it was rigged. I don't know if God came and sent an angel to help him win. I don't know what it was, but he would win. He would look like crap the whole game, and then come down to the end, the Broncos would win. He led them to the playoffs and led them to a win against the Steelers, which was surprising. And he became real popular. But all his endorsements and all the money he was making, he was giving to charity. And I did not know that. He wasn't keeping the money. And I was like, wow, that's a real standout guy. That's somebody you want the fans looking up to. Not like a lot of people who are convicted of rape or should I say, accused of rape, or beating their girlfriends or their wives, have assault charges, drug use charges, performance enhancing drug charges, and all these things. You don't want the fans looking up to these people, and that's something the players need to learn, is that they're not just competing for a job, they're an example to the fans. There's a lot of young impressionable children that get into football because of their parents or because of their friends, and they start to look up to these guys. So they need to be upstanding people. And it's too bad that there's a lot of them that aren't. And it's because of the business competitive nature of the game. But if they really wanted to change things, they could. Now, some people speculate that that's why Tim Tebow was booted off the Broncos, even though he was very popular there. They were winning games. That's why they wanted him out. And to pacify the fans, they brought in Peyton Manning. And, of course, he kept the winning going. And after that, Tim Tebow didn't get much of a shot. Granted, I thought he wasn't that good of a quarterback. His accuracy was off. He was tough, and he could scramble pretty well, and he seemed to make plays when it mattered. But generally, he would be very inaccurate and sloppy. But the fans love him, and he ended up winning a lot of games, so I'll give him that. But eventually it got to the point where it's like, yeah, teams didn't want to have him as a quarterback. They maybe wanted him to sell some jerseys and tickets, but not to actually play, because he's not that productive. He's not going to be a franchise quarterback. But apparently he's back with the Philadelphia Eagles. Supposedly he's worked on his throwing motion, and hopefully that's helped out his accuracy. Because if you can get that accuracy down, I think he'll be pretty good, and he'll be able to run around quite well too. Give him an advantage. He seems like a strong, tough fella, and he getting bonuses and stuff. He'll start giving that to charities again, and that might be what will bother the NFL. But hey, you gotta do what's right. You gotta do what you feel is right, and that's that. Don't be a people pleaser. So I'll give him that. I like the guy. I like watching him play, but I will say, not that good of a quarterback. But I hope he has changed and is better. I think he would do well in Chip Kelly's offense. He knows how to design plays to get receivers wide open, so Tebow doesn't have to be super accurate. Chip Kelly's offense was able to make Mark Sanchez look pretty good again, make him look better than he did in New York for the Jets. So I will say Tebow has a shot there, especially if he worked on his accuracy a bit. And he gets the ability to move around, which I know Chip Kelly will like. Definitely a bonus. So hopefully he gets a good shot. I'm really rooting for him. But moving on from there, I want to talk about the NFL being rigged. I think all sports are to an extent, and it's mainly from the refs. Refs make the calls that can change the game. Such in basketball, they won't call traveling, or they'll call a foul for no reason, and it's obvious. And you can tell that things are rigged. In football, the same way. They will call a penalty for, let's say, holding just randomly when a big play happened. And you will see the replay and there's nothing for holding. They just call it. And it's ridiculous. I actually agree with Bill Belichick when he says penalties should be able to be reviewed. That's something the league doesn't want, because they rig games. There's no reason why big penalties should Some of them are very obvious. False start, yeah, there's times you can see the guy jump long before the ball is snapped. You can see it on encroachment and offsides on the defense too. Probably don't need to review those plays, but when there's a big play, especially at crucial times, maybe when there's 2 minutes at the end of the half, 2 minutes at the end of the game, you definitely should be able to review penalties, especially those pass interference calls, those holding calls at the end. Definitely should be able to be reviewed. Um, but there's a big example of how the league is rigged, and this is the most blatant example I have seen of how it's rigged, and that is last year's playoff game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. In the second half of the game, Bruce Carter was covering one of the Lions players. I can't remember who the player was. But according to the rule, if the defender has his back to the quarterback and he just runs at the receiver and gets in his face and waves his hands around, it's a penalty called face guarding, which they will call it as pass interference, because the defender can't do that. He can't just run in the guy's face and just blind him. He has to turn and look for the ball and make a play on it, either deflect it, intercept it, something along those lines. That's the rule. Bruce Carter ran into the guy, had his head up into his face and had his hands up in his face. Not that he was pushing him around and poking his eyes, but doing the penalty. He was doing face guarding because he just didn't want him to catch the ball. Trying to do his best. But that is a penalty. It's called pass interference. The ref threw the flag and called pass interference, and it's like, yep, that was a good call, because that's what he did. But then a minute later, all of a sudden they're like, you know what, there's no penalty. We're just going to say, you know what, never mind, no penalty. Let's give them the Lions the fourth down and have them punt the ball. And it's kind of like, how was that not blatantly rigged? That's the first time I've ever seen an obvious penalty occur and them just say, you know what, let's pick that up. But that's how it is. I think a lot of it is rigged not just to get favorable matchups, but because of Las Vegas and the point spreads. I saw a YouTube video the other day where a fellow was getting real mad about a game. I can't remember who it was between, but he made a valid point. There's only so much time left in the game, and the points were something that was like 21 to 24, and it was the point spread was something like 48 or under over, and they still had like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, and when the team received the punt that was losing, the guy did a huge no-no. He fielded the ball at his own 4 or 5 yard line. If the ball's inside the 10, you don't field it. You let it go into the end zone and take the touchback and get the ball at the 20. Don't risk it. But he fielded it at around the 4. And when you look at it, he calls a fair catch and kneels the ball when the closest guy to him is at the 40 of the opposing team, that is. So this guy could have easily made it to about the 20. Splitting that in half, the distance. They're about 35 yards away. I'm going to give the punt team a little advantage because they're already running. They already got a head start, so I'll give them the 20 yards. And the kick returner will get 15. So they'll meet at about the 20-yard line. Unless he makes a move, does something crazy, gets out of there. I'm going to say He could at least got to the 20, but instead he kneels it at about the 4-yard line after a fair catch. And the guy was saying, who does that? Any coach, would have freaked out on that player because you don't do that. You don't. And I think that is why the league really hates the Patriots, because they don't play ball with Las Vegas. They do their job and go and win games. They don't care about the bets placed in Vegas. They do what they're going to do. I think that's why Deflategate probably got started, because they really blew up that game against the Colts. They try to make some kind of excuse that the balls were deflated so that they can overinflate him to hopefully Brady would have the ball slip out of his hands or something, start messing up the game, keep the Colts in it, and keep the score close. But it ended up being like 45-7. And then blame the whole thing on Brady, which that doesn't make any sense. That just shows again how the league is rigged. It is ridiculous. They're just on a witch hunt because they know they messed up, and they're not going to take the blame because they're not mature, respectable people. They're just businessmen trying to make a buck, and they'll throw anybody under the bus except themselves. So Brady's taking the blame in all this BS, and a lot of people buy into it because they don't like the Patriots because they win. And that's actually a good thing for the league when a team is able to win, because it boosts the quality of football. Because other teams are going to have to change to try to beat that team. And they're going to have to improve to beat that team. So it increases the quality of football in the league. It makes it more competitive. But when you try to tear down the team that always wins, you actually lower the quality of football, because any team that starts to get a good thing going, you tear them down so that you keep the football mediocre. But they're not in the business of making good football. They're in the business of making it entertaining enough to keep you drawn in while they're able to place a lot of bets and get the gambling going where the big money's at. Because that's what it's all about. Money, 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 money. Now, I guess I'll talk a little bit more of Deflategate. I think it's a huge distraction, waste of time. It's being used now just to keep the NFL in the spotlight during the off season. Because it's always about money. Tom Brady is selling more jerseys than ever. He's the top selling player so far. Because of all this, because of everybody supporting him. And it's actually doing pretty good for the league. It's kind of like there's no such thing as bad publicity. But continuing on with it, it is ridiculous to think that a team won because they deflated their balls slightly. It would make it so Brady would be maybe a bit more accurate because he can maybe squeeze the ball better. I don't know. But it would make it easier to catch in the cold, wet weather they were dealing with. But that doesn't explain why the Colts couldn't play defense. They couldn't cover. They couldn't tackle. That's what the Colts' problem is the defense. That, and on offense, they couldn't get anything going. I think Luck threw 3 or 4 interceptions. That's not going to help you win. I don't see how that has to do with the Patriots' ball being deflated. Especially that was only the first half. It was something like 21-7, 24-7 at halftime. The Colts were still in it, and then it got out of hand, and Brady threw better once the balls were inflated, where he was 9 of 9 with 2 touchdowns, no picks in the second half, and they shut out the Colts. making it 44-7 or 45-7 at the end of that game. Really? You're going to say they won because of deflated footballs? If that's what you're saying, it's just out of hatred for the Patriots, out of jealousy, or you're a Colts fan and you're embarrassed. But that's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is saying, you know what? You beat us. But you know what? We're going to learn from this. We're going to get better. And we're going to beat you next time. Because that's what the Patriots do. They get beat. They learn how they got beat. The next time they face that team, they do a lot better. That's what you need to do. It's because it's not all physical and about your talent. It's also the chess game. It's about figuring things out. Just like the Patriots didn't cheat when they were facing the Ravens and they changed the eligible receivers. That is in the rule book. You're allowed to do that. Just the other team wasn't prepared for it, so they're all pissy about it. They just have to deal with it, learn from it. You can't win them all, but all you can do is prepare. A lot of teams are just babies. That's one of the things I had to respect the Texans for, is they lost big time to the Patriots a couple times. I know one big time in the playoffs, almost as bad as the Colts got beat, 40-something to maybe like 14 or something. Got beat pretty bad. They did a good job handling J.J. Watt. But the Texans didn't make a big deal about it. They wanted to went out and improve. And that's why I respect their owner McNair, where he wasn't trying to bash the Patriots. He decided, you know what? They got a winning way. They know how to do this. I want to build that too. And he ended up bringing in some of their coaches, bringing in their style, bringing in that attitude, and it's going to pay off. It's just too bad other teams don't want to do that. They just want to tear them down to make themselves look better. I understand some of it is just in playful fun, bashing the Patriots because, you're division rivals, or you're a Colts fan, you're a Peyton Manning fan, you're a Ravens fan, Steelers fan. You're a fan of all the teams that lose to the Patriots. So a lot of it's playful fun because it's just a game. But some people take it way too serious. And if they're gonna take it that serious, well, why not put the effort into being a better football team? But anyway, this is a big joke. This whole Deflategate, just a big joke. There's not even any evidence that the deflation was done, or that Brady had anything to do with it. It's ridiculous. I don't even know why there's a point in talking about it other than to show how ridiculous the commissioner and the league is. They're a bunch of fools, and it's a shame that they're ruining the game of football. I don't know. I was thinking about all the things they've been saying in Deflategate, and I understand what the league's doing. They draw out an appeal from Brady. They make it take a while for them to actually give the response because they know Brady is going to bring it to court. So they try to drag it out as much as possible so that by the time he gets an appeal and brings it to court, that they already do the suspension, and that he already misses the 4 games before it's even concluded. But if that happens, I'm sure that he can sue the league for quite a bit of money. And the league's about money. They don't want to lose money. Their whole point of them doing what they're doing is to make money. So chances are he's going to be playing in those games. They're just trying to drag it out to get a lot of attention over the summer, make a big deal. And that's that, because they have no evidence. The only evidence they said is that he destroyed his phone. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration when someone gets a new phone. But even if you destroy your phone, you can go look at your phone records. You can go see who you called, and you can go see who you text. There's nothing that is really hidden and lost. And Brady actually gave over those conversations before he got a new phone. So the stuff that they're getting into is basically to please the Patriot haters. It's to give them justification for hating a team that is good at what they do, instead of actually getting better themselves. Um, it's sad because the average fan is real ignorant about not only the game of football, but about the business of football. And hopefully, in this podcast, I will be able to get that out to people, educate the fans a bit, talk some sense into them, because I'm a rational, logical guy. I'm fairly unbiased. I do root for my team and want them to win, but when they get beat, I accept they got beat, unless there's an obvious rigging of the game. And there is. No doubt about it. The NFL is rigged just like every other sport, because it's about making money. And once you accept that, you can just have fun whether your team wins or loses. And that's what I do, because I like the game of football. And I know my team can beat any team any day. Just it's not always going to happen. Whether they mess it up themselves, the other team has a better game plan, just had a better day, or the game's rigged. That's how it goes. How the cookie crumbles. You gotta deal with it. But one last thing I wanted to leave off with, talking about the NFL being rigged, and that is the Babied Colts. They're very babied. And I think that's actually hurting them, because you gotta be tough to win games in the playoffs. And they are babied. They've been babied for a while. They started with Peyton Manning. This will show how the NFL is rigged. They try to make some superstars so that they can make some money, and Peyton Manning is one of their proteges. When he first came into the league, joining the Indianapolis Colts as a first round pick, the actual first pick of the draft, he was in the AFC East division with the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. I remember him losing 6 straight games to the Patriots. Remember, the Patriots had his number. It was really enjoyable, because he looked like a really good quarterback, but every year he kept losing to the Patriots. Then all of a sudden the league shuffled the divisions, and they made new divisions. It used to be the East, the West, and the Central. Now it's the East, the West, the North, and South. I'm not complaining. I actually like the division, except in one instance where the Dallas Cowboys really don't fit in the NFC East, because they're not from the East. I think that's one of the things that helps them become one of the biggest generators of money in the NFL, is that they're in the South Central. They got that big area of Texas and what have you to soak up a lot of revenue from the fans. But they also get a lot of televised airtime in the East, playing the Giants, the Eagles, the Redskins twice a year. So, yeah, you're bound to have a big advantage if you're going up and being televised in the East and in the greater Texas area. So they got a bit of an unfair advantage there when it comes to bringing in revenue. But it helps out the whole league, so can't complain. can't complain there because of the salary cap. But getting back to this Peyton Manning thing and the change of divisions, the Colts were moved to the AFC South. And at this time, they had the falling apart Tennessee Titans at the time. Uh, they started to really fall apart after Eddie George retired, Steve McNair retired. They really had a tough time rebuilding and recovering from all that. I think Jeff Fisher's a really good coach, but things just kind of went sour there. He's doing a pretty good job in St. Louis now. I think they're going to only go up from last year. But they were on the down. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they were struggling a bit too. They weren't quite established. They never really found their footing. They had some good years, but after Mark Brunell left, it really wasn't too much to them anymore. They still competitive, but they were on the downside as well. And then the Houston Texans was brought into the league to finish off that division, making all of the divisions even with 4 teams. I kind of like that. But it left the Colts as the only competitive team in the division, making it easy for them to win the division, which means an automatic playoff spot. But it made it too easy for them because they go to the playoffs real easy. They didn't have to really fight that hard, and that's why they're able to get beat by teams that have to deal with a competitive schedule, such as the Patriots, who they always trying to throw a stick in the spoke of their wheels, trying to make it hard for them to win their games, which makes them tougher. So when they do win, they get into the playoffs, they're ready for a fight, and that's what helps them. These teams who have it too easy during the regular season, they're able to put up all these big stats, aren't prepared to struggle in the playoffs and to have a big fight. And that's what hurts the Colts. They are babied. They have it too easy. And that's what's going on this year. After losing Peyton Manning, it's been like, what, 3-4 years now? They were able to get another franchise quarterback in Andrew Luck, which is pretty surprising. I mean, you lose one and get another right after. I guess it's same thing with the Packers losing Brett Favre and getting Aaron Rodgers, but it doesn't happen all too often to get a franchise quarterback, yet alone one right after the other. Just too bad they babying him a little bit, because this past year they were the top 3-4 teams in the league, because the top 4 teams were Patriots, Seahawks, and then Packers, Colts. So you can say Packers are number 3, Colts number 3. I would go with the Packers. I think they're a more competitive, well-rounded team with a better defense and an experienced quarterback who prove he can win in big games and doesn't throw a million interceptions in the playoffs. But anyway, being a top team like that, you have to have a tougher schedule. Well, this year the Colts have the second easiest schedule in the league. Second easiest. Namely because 2 of the worst teams in the league last year were division rivals, the Titans and the Jaguars. But, man, second easiest? They should have a good record and go to the playoffs, have a good chance to win the division, but it's going to make them soft. It is going to make them soft. It's going to make it so they don't win the big games in the playoffs, unless, of course, it is set up for them, because they want Andrew Luck to be the next figurehead of the NFL, because a lot of quarterbacks are on their way out. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo. They only have a few years left before they have to call it quits. Then you get some other guys slowly behind him, like Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers. And after that, there's really not a real standout quarterback. You get some mediocre guys like Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Ryan Tannehill. Some guys that are good. I wouldn't mind him as my quarterback per se, but they're not franchise guys. They're not the big dogs that we've seen in the past, that we actually have right now, that can be league MVPs. But who knows? Maybe they'll get motivated from what I'm saying here, and they'll put up some big numbers this year and show that they can compete. But we'll see. We'll see about that. But that being said, I am going to wrap this up. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of X's and O's. I appreciate you listening. And if you like what you're hearing, give me a thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe. I will get things set up where you can check out where else I am posting this up once I really figure it out. And yeah, thanks again for listening, and take care.